Hello everyone, welcome back. My name's Adriana. I'm a knitter living on the east coast of Canada. Today I want to share with you everything that I knit in 2025. I have most of the things that I made here with me, but I do have a number of things that I gave away as gifts. So this is most of the things, and then I think I'll just talk about the items that I don't physically have with me anymore. I'll just put them on at the end. But yes, here's everything that I knit in 2025. It was a really good knitting year. I took a big break in the summer. I'm just naturally more excited about knitting in fall, winter, rather than spring, summer. I was also in my first trimester of pregnancy in spring going into summer. And I felt so sick, I didn't want to do anything. So my knitting took a big break for like 3 months where I didn't knit anything. But overall, I think I had a great year. Before I begin going into each individual project, I have some statistics that I'm going to share with you. If I'm looking down, I'm just looking at the notes I have on my laptop. So in 2025, talking about kind of the category of each item that I made 2 sweaters, 3 blankets, 2 toques / head warmers, hats, 3 pairs of mittens, 1 skirt, 2 things that I categorized just as like baby stuff, and 5 pairs of socks or slippers. The baby stuff category, I just did as like, okay, yes, I made socks the size for a baby, and I made a hat the size for a baby. I kept those in the hat and socks category. The baby stuff, I just did as like, well, you'll see. I made like a little set and a sleepsuit type thing that I felt like didn't really fit in other categories. I think I had hoped to make more sweaters or cardigans for myself this year, but since I was pregnant for so much of the year, for 9 months of the year, I didn't really want to make anything that I couldn't try on and like know exactly how it was going to fit. So maybe that'll be something that increases in 2026. Pattern type, 17 of the projects I completed were from a pattern and 1 was self-drafted. For pattern cost, I have, of the projects that I knit from a pattern, not self-drafted, 10 of those patterns were paid for patterns and 7 of those patterns were free. However, I did do some pattern repeats, so maybe I didn't buy the pattern this year, or maybe I bought it this year, but then I knit it multiple times. And there was also any patterns that I got from the library, I included in the paid for section because technically they're not just like a free pattern for everyone. But I did use the library to get, I think, just 1 pattern. In the end, it ended up being this year, but I knit it twice. For pattern repeats, I was interested in this because I did a lot of pattern repeats this year. 12 of the projects that I made, my newborn is sleeping beside me, so if you hear any grunts, noises, that's her. 12 of the projects I made were my first time doing that pattern, and then 6 of the projects I made were repeat patterns, either from ones that I had made like in previous years or things that I made multiple times throughout the year. Recipients, I made 6 projects for myself and 12 projects as gifts. Most of these were for my kids, I think. So I do have like a lot of them like in my house, and only a few things have left my house. And finally, color. What colors did I work with this year? The most common color I worked with was white. And what I did for this one is I just did kind of the dominant color. So like in a project that had multiple colors, I just did the color that was most dominant. So for example, this one down here, the navy and gray striped blanket, I just put it in blue because that's kind of the color that you see first when you look at it. So the color that I used the most across, all the projects was white / cream. I did a lot of little projects with white for the baby. So I think that's why that is so much higher than the rest. Then gray with 4 projects was the next most popular color. And then I had 2 brown projects, 2 blue projects, 2 green projects, 1 orange project, and 1 pink project. That's all the stats I have. I know some people do stats on like their yardage or meterage, like how much yarn they use throughout the year. And that's just not something I keep track of. When you're working with numbers that big, it means nothing to me. And even now, I can't tell you, I've done a few sweaters for myself, and even now I can't tell you what meterage would be enough to make a sweater for me. I have to like go back to the beginning every time I find a pattern that I want to knit, and I can't just guesstimate what the meterage will be for the size I want for that sweater. So yeah, when numbers get that big, it loses meaning. So that's the stats I have for you. Let's go into the projects themselves. I was going to do this in chronological order, but I think I'll actually just do top down this stack and then put on the few projects that I don't physically have with me. I'll put them at the end. And yeah, I've talked about all of these projects in a lot of detail in my podcast episodes from throughout 2025. So I'm not going to go super detailed with everything. I'm more thinking I'll just do kind of my reflections on the project. What do I think of the project now after it's been off my needles for a bit? Do I use it? How's it wearing? That sort of thing. So first one, we're starting off pretty strong. These are the double felted slippers. It's a free pattern from Sedna's Garn. I made these for my son, and I believe I made these even smaller than the smallest size in the pattern. I love these. To be honest, I'm not a huge fan of a lot of knits for kids, just because I'm really not precious with their clothes, and I do like to knit with non-superwash wools. So to put in like the amount of effort required for keeping a hand knit item clean and not destroyed for a kid is more than I think is worth it. So this, however, is one pattern that I love, and I definitely think I'm going to make again as my kids get bigger, like their feet get bigger. This pair of slippers, I think part of the reason why I like it so much is, one, because it's felted, so it makes the fabric a bit more durable. And then also I put little leather patches on the bottom to help with like slipping. And I think that helped too. I mean, it's really thick, so it would take a long time to wear through the layer on the bottom. But I do think these leather patches help with keeping it durable. Definitely recommend this pattern. I did the modification of doing it was either Judy's Magic cast on or Turkish cast on, so you don't have to seam at the end. Love doing that. I'm happy with how they turned out, and they get a lot of use. Next, I have a couple baby knits. We'll talk about these two together. So this is the Hipster Hat by Petite Knit. This is the Perfect Newborn Socks by Tabitha Gandy. And I made these for my baby who was born in December. I've knit the Hipster Hat before. It's a great pattern. There is a free pattern that is like basically the same thing as it. I haven't tried it, but you can maybe look it up. I think it's called the 2x2 hat. This is what it looks like. I'm really happy with how it turned out. It fits my daughter. It's a little bit big, so it'll fit her better in the spring, I think. But she has already gotten some use out of this. These I made again for my daughter who was born at the end of the year, and I needed to make the the cast on. I needed to make the cast on stretchier, I think, because I can't really get this over her foot and heel. I mean, you don't know how big they're gonna be when they are born, so this could work for someone, but these were just a little bit too small. I didn't get to actually put them on her. I might try again, but I think they're too tight at the top, that I can't just like, I'm scared I'm gonna like break a toe, or, you know, break her foot or something, because she's still so little, and this isn't like just easily going over. The other socks I have for her are the super stretchy kind that you open them up super wide and you just like, in one little sweep, get it on, and then it cinches in. And you can't really do that with these. You need to like maneuver a bit more, which I'm a little scared to do. So these, they're cute, but I don't know if I'll actually be able to use these at all. The next thing I have is this pair of Arctic Blast mitts. This is a pattern by Star Athena. I love these. I use them a lot, especially when my son started school and the mornings were like just a little bit chilly. I love that these are a pair of fingerless mittens that don't look like a wrist brace. I think the lace pattern helps with that a lot and makes it a little more like decorative. This is a really nice pattern, and it's one that I made twice this year. I gave away the other pair, so I have one pair for myself, and then another pair is with somebody else. Here's another project that I made 2 of this year. These are the LV or Elv slippers. This is a pattern from the 52 Weeks of Socks book. This is the one that I borrowed the book from the library. So if your library has pattern books, definitely check there, especially if there's only like one pattern that you like from the book. Instead of buying the whole book, you can borrow it from the library. I think you can also buy this pattern individually now on Ravelry. And I love this pattern. This is not the first pair I made. The first pair I made was a pair of the contrasting color was navy blue that I made for my mom. And she wore them a lot, so much that she wore a hole through the bottom, and I did patch the hole. I'm thinking of maybe putting, if I make more of these, of putting leather patches on the bottom as well, but it's like, you don't want to cover up all this beautiful color work. So yeah, I don't know if I will, or if it'll just be, you know, you keep patching them as holes wear through. This was a really fun pattern. This was my first time doing stranded color work, and it took me a few tries to get it right. I'm really happy with how it turned out. These are really good for in between fall and winter, when it's like cold in the mornings, but then by the afternoon it's kind of warm. So yeah, I did lose these for a period of time right when it would be perfect to wear them, but I did get to wear these right during that time when you would wake up, want something on your feet, and then later in the day you don't need anything. So another really good pattern. Oh, I will talk about the yarn with this one, because I feel like you need a really strong yarn, a really durable yarn. Even though my mom's pair did wear through on the bottom, she wore them a lot, like daily for months. So yeah, this yarn is Briggs & Little Regal. It is a really good, strong yarn. That was a yarn that I knit with. Did I knit with it a lot? I did a few projects with it throughout the year, and I'm quite pleased with it. I think it's my favorite Briggs & Little yarn, the Regal line. Then I have my one self-drafted pattern of the year. I put them on sock blockers because they were all kind of crumpled up in my sock drawer. This is just a pair of stockinette socks. I didn't even do like a ribbed cuff or anything at the top. It's just straight stockinette all the way down. I did this with a Briggs & Little Sport plus an orange mohair that I found at the thrift store, and I love these. I think these are my favorite pair of hand knit socks. And you'll notice I made these at the beginning of the year. I didn't make any socks, besides these ones, but I didn't make any other socks for myself this year. And I think that's because I found my favorite pair of hand knit socks. I don't feel like I need any more. As of right now, I feel like I don't need any more because these are my favorite pair. They fit really well. They feel nice. They're quite durable. Again, I used a Briggs & Little yarn, which is quite rustic. And then I knit it pretty tight, like on a tight gauge. And the addition of the silk mohair made it even stronger. So these are like my perfect hand knit socks. We have another hipster hat. This one is one I made for my husband. I knit a hipster hat in 2024 for my son with the same yarn, same pattern, obviously. And it's great. This is yarn, the yarn that's local to me. It's called Old School Acres. And this is just undyed gray, like the color of the sheep. And I don't think it's too scratchy. That's something that you always, anytime there's, wool around your face, it's kind of a sensitive area. And my husband doesn't complain about it. My son has complained a couple times about his, just I see him scratching. And then he'll say oh, it's really itchy. But that was kind of at the beginning of colder weather when I don't know, maybe he's just had to get used to it a little bit. And he doesn't mind it now. This is a baby item that I made. This is the Ellen's Coming Home set. It's a pattern by Petite Knit. I knit this with some yarn that was local to me. Again, the Old School Acres, just undyed yarn. This was a fun project. It was my first time knitting kind of like a cardigan style where you're doing a sweater, but it's, going back and forth. And it was my first time doing buttons. I did a few modifications to this pattern. All of the edges were supposed to be ribbed edges, and I swapped them out for picot edges. And then the button band was supposed to be a ribbed button band, and I swapped it out for a double knit button band. This was also my first time putting in an elastic waistband. And I knit the size 3 to 6 months, but pulling it out, I feel like she could wear this pretty soon. So I'm gonna keep it. I had kind of tucked it away for bring this out in the spring, when she's actually 3 to 6 months, but I might keep it out now just to see if it fits her. It'll fit her soon. My other baby stuff item was the Selma's Sleepsuit pattern by Petite Knit. I knit this in Patton's Classic Wool Worsted in, I think it was called Natural Mix. I had so much of this yarn because I had bought enough to do, I think, a sweater for my husband, and then a Sophie scarf, or a Sophie shawl for just someone. And when the yarn arrived in the mail, I was like, oh, this will not be a good color for my husband. It has kind of almost like a purple undertone to it. Yeah, so I was left with like so much of this yarn, and I worked through a lot of it this year, which I'm really happy about. A lot of it got eaten up by this because it's garter, so it grows kind of slow and it's kind of thick. This was my first time putting buttons on a project. This was my first time doing like a button band, but like putting buttons on a project, this was my first time. This is obviously still too big for my daughter. I'm thinking this will fit her more. Ooh, I don't even know if it'll fit her like a year from now. It's quite big. But yeah, I will keep this tucked away for when she is bigger. I thought this was a really good pattern. It was easy to follow, easy to understand. And I had seen a few people in like the project pages who modified it to just like do a cardigan. Like you just knit the top half and then you stop before you do the legs. And I think I might use the rest of the yarn I have of this to make a cardigan version of this for my other daughter, my older daughter. And that might eat down the rest of that yarn. This is a really exciting one. I love how this turned out. This was a little bit of an experiment in a few ways. This is the Frankie sweater. It's a pattern by Senna's Garn. I knit this as my Grinch-inspired Christmas sweater. And in a lot of ways, this was a bit of an experiment for me, or like kind of like taking a few risks, because I was intending this to be just like a Christmas sweater that I wear like a couple times a year at Christmas. I was able to take a few risks that maybe I normally wouldn't. First off, being the color. I don't know if I ever would have chosen this color for myself. I usually go for more like dark greens, not this vibrant green, but I really like it. I mean, tell me if it looks bad on me, but I feel like this kind of more spring green is actually quite nice. So I will definitely be wearing this outside. Oh, I have some ends to weave in still. Outside of the Christmas season. Another thing was trying a compound raglan. Love how that turned out. And then also, I think this is the first sleeve that I've done that has no decreases. Just, you know, however many stitches you have at the top of the sleeve, that's how much you end with when you're binding off. And I wasn't sure if I'd like that or not, and I do like it. I have not had this finished long enough to comment on like the wear of it, the durability. I've worn it a couple times, but I'm guessing it'll wear quite nicely because of the yarn combination I used. I used Briggs & Little Sport. It's quite a rustic yarn. And I held that with a Knitting for Olive soft silk mohair. So I feel like it'll be strong. There's been no pilling yet. I mean, yeah, like I said, I really haven't worn it enough to really be like, I've worn this. But just going off of what I know from previous knits and how this yarn behaves in other projects, I'm guessing that there won't really be much pilling and that it'll be a pretty durable sweater. I do like the drape of it. I feel like Briggs & Little, everyone loves the Heritage line from Briggs & Little. And I think that one is the one that's most widely available. But I think my favorites are the Regal and then the Sport. I don't know if I totally love the Sport by itself, but I do like it held with a mohair. I did 2 projects. My 2 bright projects for the year were done with Briggs & Little Sport plus a mohair. And I really like how they turned out. The other sweater I made was with Old School Acres yarn. This was a really special sweater for me. The pattern is the Harlow Sweater V-neck. This is a pattern by Kadri. And yeah, this was a really special pattern for me because this was the first like big piece that I made with the yarn that's local to me. And it just felt so special to be wearing something that was grown by sheep living like 10 minutes away from me. I feel like it kind of tells a story, right? And I love that it's just so localized. This piece of clothing, you know, has spent its entire, like all the materials from this has spent its entire life in this province, grown close to me, spun close to me, and then knit in my house, obviously. So I think that's really special. I had some problems with this, even though they were all, it's undyed and they were all from the same lot, but there was some variations in color throughout the yarn I had. So I saved the darker bits, and you can see it a bit better now that the sunlight is coming in. I saved the darker bits for the ribbed parts. You can see it, I feel like it's really noticeable here, but in real life, like when I'm wearing it, it's not something I notice at all. This is my first time doing a V-neck, and I do remember thinking that if I were to reknit this, I would put a little more length in the front before I join under the arms, because the fit of this sweater, I like to wear like a V-neck sweater a little bit almost like up and back a bit, not so that this collar is like sitting right at the back of your neck. I like it to be like back a little bit, but that made the sweater kind of go like this. So the front was a little bit higher than the back. So just for future me, if I do this again, or you know, if you wear your sweaters like that also, I would knit the front section just a little bit longer before joining with the back panel to have a little bit more fabric in the front, so I can wear it. So I can wear it kind of like pushed back a bit almost. This next project is my one, I'll say, flop of the year. This is my Sylvia wrap skirt by Eggyo Knit. This is the first time I made a skirt. I'm not a skirt person, so I don't know why I thought this would be a great idea. It's nice. It turned out a little bit thick and a little bit too big for me. I feel like, this is the front. I feel like my finished project does not look like the pattern project photos. Specifically in this section here. So this kind of flap bit comes down. I feel like it looks prettier in the pattern photos. Like it's more like this, and mine doesn't really have that dramatic of an angle to it. Also, the yarn color and texture of this pattern, it's like a broken rib stitch. As I was like nearing the end of this, I was like, why am I not loving the way this is looking? And I realized the color and texture look really similar to some nasty carpeting that we have on a set of stairs we have in our house. And so now every time I see this skirt, I just think of kind of gross, a little bit grimy old carpet, and it makes me not want to wear it. I also finished this kind of right as my body was changing with pregnancy, so I've never worn this. I tried it on for like a finished project photo, and that's the only time I wore it. I think this will be frogged at some point in its life. I don't know if it's still a bit too close to, you know, finishing this, that I'm like this was a lot. Like, this took a long time to make. I don't want to just rip it all out. But yeah, I'll keep it, and I'm guessing this yarn will be reused for something else. Last three things that I physically have here are all blankets. This one is my Tweed baby blanket. Yes, this is the Tweed baby blanket, a pattern by Jared Flood. And this was special because my grandma was a very avid knitter, and I have a little lap blanket that that she knit, and I knew that at some point in my knitting journey I wanted to try to recreate it. I didn't know what pattern she used, I didn't know what yarns she used, and as I was scrolling Ravelry sometime last year, I just came across a blanket pattern that I was like, I have this exact blanket in my house, exact colors, like exact yarn, exact pattern. I'm like 99% sure this is the pattern and the yarn that my grandmother used, and that was the Tweed baby blanket. And so I made my own version, not with the same yarn. This was with Briggs & Little Regal, but I made this, my version of the blanket. And that was just fun to be able to follow a pattern that she followed and end up with, a blanket that she also made. I've ended up using this as a baby blanket for my daughter. It's quite large, so it'll definitely grow with her. Is this like the softest blanket ever? No. Like I said, Briggs & Little is quite rustic, so it's not like a super soft blanket, but I'm not intending it to be like next to skin. It's more like almost like a top layer over other clothes and blankets and warm things. The last projects that I have here are two other blankets. They're the same pattern, so I'll talk about them together. This is the Learn to Love Steeks blanket pattern, a free pattern by Pearl Soho. And I made these blankets as kind of car seat slash like on the couch blankets for my older two kids. And this was a really fun pattern. This is again where I used a lot of that gray Patons yarn. I used it for the edges and half of the stripes in both of them. I love this pattern. This was another kind of highlight standout pattern for me this year. After I had my knitting slump all throughout the summer of just like not feeling well, not wanting to knit, this was the pattern that got me back into knitting. I picked up this project, or I cast on this project, and it flew by. I said in my podcast episodes about this pattern that this is a great pattern for learning how to steek, and it has pictures for every step of the steeking process. It's a really great introduction to steeking and really holds your hand through the whole process, which I appreciated. For my son, I just have the two colors, the gray and the navy, and then my daughter, I have four colors, the gray, a dark pink, a light pink, and a white. And I used a lot of stash yarn for this, which I'm happy about. I think I have actually talked about all the projects. So the projects that I don't have with me are just another pair of Arctic Blast mitts, another pair of the Elv or LV slippers, and then I had one more pair of fingerless gloves that I made called the Creme Fingerless Gloves, a pattern by Emily Louis, which I don't physically have with me, so I'll put up a picture. And these ones are just, they're much more just basic pair of fingerless gloves, just stockinette with some ribbing, and yeah, same yarn and everything that I used for the Arctic Blast mitts. but yeah, just a different pattern. But yeah, I think that's all. Yeah, that's all of the patterns, all of the projects that I completed. After looking at all of these, thinking about like the highlights of the year and the things that I learned, obviously I got to learn steeking with these projects. I did some lace in these fingerless gloves. I did buttons on these projects for the first time. I knit a skirt for the first time. I knit a lot with local yarns and really enjoyed that. I'm kind of really honing in on what yarns I love using, and I think this year I really only used Briggs & Little, Old School Acres, and like some different types of mohair, and then the Patons yarn. And I think that's everything that I used. I'm kind of figuring out and finding yarns that I like working with. I'm discovering through the yarns that I choose to use, I'm discovering that I really value local yarn or like Canadian yarn, keeping things kind of close to home. And thinking about why I value that, I think it makes it feel more personal. You're making these pieces that are really special. You're spending a lot of time with them. And so using yarns that you feel a connection to, I think makes it even more special. So yeah, I'm learning a lot about myself through these projects, and I'm looking forward to creating more knitted pieces in 2026. Like I said, I've talked about all of these projects in past like videos from last year. So if you're interested in like a lot more details about each project, you can go back and find that. I also have a lot more details about, you know, like needle size and yardage used on my project page for each of these projects on Ravelry. So if you're interested in that, you can always go there to find all that information. And you can also always ask me a question in the comments and I will do my best to answer it. So yeah, that's it for, oh, this is good timing because the sun is right in my eyes now. That's it for everything that I knit in 2025. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.